Okay, 11:30 Hong Kong time on the 3rd of January 2021. Let's begin today's webinar. Happy New Year to everyone. And I'm very happy today to kick off the year 2021 with my long lost friend, Will Kabat-Zinn. So believe it or not, the last time I saw Will was probably around 26 years ago, around 1995. I hate to admit that I'm so old now, but what is true is true. Will and I were roommates during the freshman year at Cornell University. We stayed at the International Living Center and seemingly randomly placed in the dorm room. But 26 years later on, things might not have been that random in the first place. Maybe something, some power, some hidden power had put us in that dorm room 26, 27 years ago. So great to have you. And let me just start off by introducing myself. I think a large portion of the audience know me already, but I think a few of you do not know me. My name is Simon Hui. I am the owner of Mindfulness Studio in Hong Kong. In fact, we just opened a few months ago in early September of the year 2020. I grew up in Nigeria, and as I said, I attended Cornell University with Will as my roommate back in 1994 to 1999. I studied civil engineering, followed by a Master of Engineering. Obviously, I'm not an engineer today, but that was what I studied back then. And then I went on to learn yoga in India, and eventually I also became a Buddhist monk for 3 years, and I ordained in Yangon, Burma. So the aim of Mindful Studio is just to bring inner peace and health to everyone who are open to it, right? And having joining me today is Will Kabat-Zinn. I will just briefly read part of his very impressive profile. Will is a meditation teacher based in the San Francisco area, and he is a teacher of the Spirit Rock Meditation Center. Will has taught meditation to neuroscientists who study the effects of mindfulness and meditation on the brain. His passion is to help people wake up to their own deepest nature and to embody this truth in their work, life, and relationships. Will is also a father of 2. And as for our audience, we have a diverse composition today. We have a contingent from the University of Hong Kong, my classmates who are in the Master of Buddhist Counseling program. We also have a venerable and children mindfulness experts, yoga teachers, psychotherapists, senior executives of large conglomerates, and also successful businessmen and women. Geographically, as far as I know, we have members joining from the United States, of course, the United Kingdom, Italy, Malaysia, Vietnam, and here in Hong Kong. So we have a wonderful group of people with us today, and I hope you all will enjoy this webinar, which I think the time will pass by very quickly. So we have to treasure every minute of it. In terms of the agenda, very soon, Will lead us in a short meditation practice, just so that we can settle into the space. After that, Will and I will engage in a dialogue, a conversation, some sort of question and answer dialogue. After that, it is turn for the audience to ask us questions, and please use the Q&A box, because I don't think we will have the opportunity to monitor the chat box. So if you have something to ask, you can ask me, ask Will, or ask either of us using the Q&A box. And at the end of the session, it will be me leading a short meditation practice to close today's webinar. So with all those done and behind us, let's hand the time now to Will. Will, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. And thanks to all of you. It's so nice to be here with you. And amazing to me to discover that Simon and I had shared this connection around this practice that we did not know we had back in the day. In fact, even Simon reached out to me a couple of years ago and sent me some photographs of him as a monk in Burma, and I just couldn't believe it. Also because we'd actually practiced in the same tradition in the Burmese under the umbrella of Mahasi Sayadaw and his students. So it's amazing. And so I'm very happy to be here with you all and to get a chance to share with you about this practice and way of awareness, and that is, I think, been so powerful and important for both of us, and that we both care a lot about sharing, obviously, and also just a joy to support you, Simon, in the wonderful work that you're doing in this studio that you're starting and stuff.
Thank you.
So I think, as was said, we will have time to dialogue about practice, about meditation, about benefits of meditation and ways of practicing. We thought we'd start with a little bit of kind of formal sitting meditation practice. Of course, formal doesn't mean painfully serious. It just means a little structured. And so some of you I know have, your lives are about meditation practice. So I'll just offer some guidance for whoever would find it useful. Just some simple mindfulness practice for the next few minutes. Also just to help everyone arrive a bit. So just finding a way to sit that is upright and relatively balanced. And you can let your eyes close or leave them open with a soft gaze. You can begin by sensing and feeling the whole of your body sitting. And often we're so caught up in all of our activity and in our thought worlds that we can get easily disconnected from the body. So we begin just by sensing the whole body. And feeling the contact of your feet on the floor or your legs in the ground. And letting your feet just rest on the floor. And feeling the contact of your body and the chair or whatever surface you're sitting on. And feeling your hands, letting your hands just rest as they are. And softening in the belly. And feeling and relaxing the whole span of your back. And relaxing in the muscles of your chest and your shoulders, and letting your shoulders hang gently. And relaxing down your arms into your elbows and your forearms. And softening into your wrists and your hands. And your fingers down to your fingertips and your thumbs down to the tips of your thumbs. And relaxing too in the muscles of your neck and your jaw and throughout the face. Just letting your jaw hang gently. Relaxing the forehead and the sides and back of your head, and also the top of your head, the whole of your scalp. And once again, sensing the whole of the body sitting with an attitude of allowing, of welcoming. So letting whatever is happening in the domain of the body just be as it is, however it is. Whatever sensations are present, emotion, feeling, just letting all of it be. And within the field of the body, and see if you can notice the soft flow of sensation that comes with your body breathing naturally. So of course your body is already breathing. It's been breathing all day and all night and as long as you've been alive. So simply noticing where you can find any felt evidence of breathing. And maybe feeling the light touch of the air at the nostrils. Or feeling the chest expanding and softening, or the abdomen, belly gently rising and falling. And for now, just letting your attention rest with the breath sensations, riding on the waves of the breathing. Just like a passenger along for the ride. Along for the ride with the in-breath, along for the ride with the out-breath. And as you feel the body breathing, just letting whatever else is happening happen in the background. The sounds in the environment, thoughts passing through the mind, other sensations, feelings, reactions, whatever it is that's happening, just letting it happen around the breathing in the background. So we're featuring the breath in the midst of everything else. Feeling the swell of the in-breath. Feeling the softening, the letting go with the out-breath. And resting with awareness in the pause or the stillness between breaths. Of course, sometimes you'll lose touch with the breathing, and usually it'll be because some thought world has captivated the attention. You're imagining something, remembering something, or planning something, or in some memory, or even in some narrative or story about the present. And so when this happens, see if you can shift your attention to watch the scene playing out in the mind, or listen to the words or the dialogue. Usually we're kind of ruled by our thoughts and lost in them, but here we can observe thinking just as another aspect of experience, even for a few moments, and then finding the breath again, just coming back to feel one in-breath or one out-breath. So, of course, most of the stress we experience is not about what's actually happening in the present in our direct experience, but is related to our thoughts about it, about what it means, about where it's going, what will happen. So here from the very beginning, we're practicing having a home base for our attention in experience that's not based in thinking, in the body breathing. Then learning how to observe the mind, to watch the mind. When you're ready in your own time, before you open your eyes, see if you can notice the intention to open them. Before you open the eyes, there's some intention. See if you can notice that, and when you do, see if you can notice the opening of the eyes, and notice that the world appears to you. And of course, it's appearing in your awareness. So just to say, we did a very brief sitting practice, just some very beginning instructions, but that everything that's happening in that seated meditation is happening as we talk to each other tonight, as you sit there and listen and think about things. So see if you can include the screen in awareness. Notice that things aren't just appearing on screen, you're seeing them. And of course, you have your breathing that's here all through the night, and you're having different experiences come and go, different thoughts, different attitudes, different emotions, and you can also be aware of them in real time as we do whatever we do next. And I'm not sure exactly what that will be.
Thank you so much, Will, for leading us with that practice. I was just thinking, I shouldn't be thinking during the practice, but because today is a special day, I was thinking. And I was wondering that if only we knew about the practice back in our days at college, and if we were to meditate in our dorm room, I think the whole university experience would be very different. But whatever it was, it was. So, and now we are here. So the past was the past. And it's still a good past because we got to meet each other. So speaking about the past, can I just ask you, how was your journey like after graduation? And how did you find the Dharma?
Well, let me say, first of all, that I had been exposed to meditation my whole life because my father is a meditation teacher. So I don't have an excuse for not being into it in my 20s, in my, my late teens and stuff. So, maybe you had an excuse or something, but I had, grown up around it, but I wasn't, I think there's a time, again, we have to come to it ourselves in a way that feels personal and direct. And so you knew me then. I wasn't really interested in that kind of thing at the time. But I want to just say too, just one thing that I wanted to mention beforehand is, of course, we're meeting like this in the context of this global pandemic, and that's very much on my mind as we sit here together and talk about the practice, and it relates to how I got into practice, which had to do with, when I was 24, having a moment of unbidden clarity, which was both, where I could see my mind for some reason more than I had before. And I could see a lot of the patterning in it that was leading to dissatisfaction and dis-ease for myself. And I also at that time also had some space from that patterning. And so I had a glimpse of some clarity, some real spaciousness, and a sense of being able to watch the mind without being kind of locked in it. So that was just like a gift or something that came for a short time. And that's what got me into practicing for myself, even though I had done it as an athlete and stuff in high school and just thinking it would help me get a little edge. But it was at that time that I realized, oh, my whole experience is shaped by what's happening in this mind. And that's true for all of us.
Yeah.
I saw that very clearly. And that was what set me on the path of, I want to explore what's happening in here. I want to kind of go deeper into this. So that set me off on kind of years of meditating. But I think it relates because right now in the pandemic, especially all of you sheltering in place or being so limited in what you can do, I think people are really seeing much more than when we can run around and be very distracted. How much our mind states of kind of completely determine, or our thoughts, whether they're hopeful or hopeless, really determine our reality. So I think a lot of people are more interested in, how do I work with this situation? So that's a little bit, but I'm really curious, Simon, how about you? Because you sent me that picture of you. This is a beautiful picture of you, a few pictures of you in robes and with your preceptor and stuff, but what happened? How did that?
I think a lot of people around me at the time had the same question, because in Chinese culture, it's it's a little bit of a stigma when a person goes forth to become a monk. It's a little bit like too much of the movies and TV shows that they illustrate when someone goes forth to become a monk, something traumatic had happened to that person. Maybe someone had died in their lives. They have, they're crushed by their lovers. Something traumatic happened, and that person had to run off to be a monk to escape from reality. That's usually how my culture sees monkhood, right? So I'm not surprised if people back then thought something happened to me in a traumatic way, and then I chose to become a monk just to escape. So it's not that, but something dramatic did happen in the sense that I became very tense and stressed in my job at the time, right? Because we were trained during our years, we were trained to be very hardworking employees. Like the goal of our university degree is almost to find a nice job in a big company, earning good salaries, climbing the corporate ladder, that kind of a training, right? So that's exactly what I went for. So I went for the high paying jobs. And of course, with the high salaries, it always comes with a lot of responsibilities and obligations. And that, of course, led to stress, right? So even though I was relatively young at the time, the stress was just unbearable at some point. And back then, there weren't that much focus on wellness and health for employees. It's just people just keep pushing and pushing and pushing you to your limits, right? And we also think that's how life is supposed to be. Aren't we supposed to work till we drop, to make a living, right? But at some point, it got so much that I began to question. It came straight out of my experience in suffering. I began to question myself, is this really what life is about? Is it really about going to school, having a nice degree, finding a nice job, getting worked to death. And then when it's time to retire, your body is already too frail and too weak, to enjoy the rest of the life. You might be spending your retirement years in disability or with all sorts of sickness, right? So I really put that question in my mind. Is this what life is really about, right? So, but the problem was I didn't know where to find the answer, right? So I had no idea what meditation was, no idea about Buddhism and all that, right? So, but I just had this question: why is there so much suffering in life, right? So then I just started on a search without knowing where to search. So one friend back then, maybe when I was 29, he said, look, Simon, there is this yoga studio that just opened in Hong Kong. So yoga was quite new at the time in Hong Kong. He said, oh, look, there's this yoga studio. It's good for fitness. Let's go have a workout. So I said, what the hell is yoga? But anyway, I just went with him, right? So, and then I liked it. The first class, the first month, of course, it was torture because my body was already so tense. But slowly and slowly, I found out there are some benefits of practicing yoga. Not only the body became more supple, but somehow there's this calm in the mind that surfaced, right? So after practicing yoga, the following day when I go to work, somehow I feel better. So the stress is still there, right, at work, but somehow my relationship with the stress was different. So then I was like, okay, maybe there is something to it in this yoga practice. Maybe I'm beginning to get a glimpse of the answer to my question, as to what life is really about, right? So then, of course, me being me, I like to go to the source of all things. Then yoga, of course, came from India, originated from India, right? So then I was like, okay, maybe I should go to India to find out what this yoga practice is all about that can bring physical and mental health to people. So at the time, I asked my teacher in Hong Kong, who was Indian, and I asked him, I said, sir, where do you learn yoga from? I want to go to your teacher in India to learn from him. And then he told me about this teacher whom I'm extremely grateful for, right? And so I traveled to India and I stayed for 6 weeks the first time and went through this horrendous, very tough training, especially for me because my body was so tight. But then after those 6 weeks, again, it's like a whole new world opened up. It turns out, I didn't know back then, this teacher not only teach the physical yoga, he asked us to stay in a pose for a long time so we can monitor. At the time, I didn't know what was insight meditation. I didn't know any of these jargons. He just asked us to watch our breath and watch our bodies. So okay, I'll just watch, right? But after 6 weeks, another transformation happened in me. It's like, okay, the world is like completely different. It has fully opened up, right? So I got the first part of the answer to my original question. Is life, really just about suffering? To make the long story shorter, after I returned to Hong Kong, and another occasion, my friend introduced me to a lady who is also a yoga practitioner. And then I told her about my story about yoga practice in India. And then she said, why don't you go to a meditation retreat in Thailand? There is this place called Swan Mok in southern Thailand, and it was founded by Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. Of course, I had no idea what is Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. I had no idea what was Buddhism, meditation, but she said, I think you will like it. So just go to Thailand for that retreat. And I said, okay, I'll go. And then I went. And it was a 10-day silent retreat. After I arrived, I knew we had to sleep on concrete beds. The pillow was wooden. There were all sorts of insects, mosquitoes, all these wild animals, geckos all around. But yet we were asked to sit around, I think, 16 to 18 hours a day, not just sit, but also walking meditation. All these activities were so new to me. I clearly remembered during my first sit, the mind was so busy. Like everything from the past 20, 25 years was just arising and arising and arising in my mind. It was so loud. Of course, the environment was very quiet because being a meditation center in southern Thailand, but my mind was so busy. I was so amazed that what this mind can do to a person, or what could possibly happen in one's mind, right? But again, after the 10 days, I felt like I am one step closer to getting an answer to my original question. You know, so I had some very pleasant experiences, extreme calmness. I was able to sit for hours without moving, and not speaking for 10 days was wonderful. I felt so energized after the 10 days, and that led me to realize we do spend a lot of energy speaking. And I think a lot of times when we speak, we are just speaking about other people, gossiping. So that, like, so many little eye-opening events happened during those 10 days. So that gave me additional faith to carry on with the practice. So, and later on, as if by chance again, I joined another meditation retreat in Hong Kong, held by a monk in the Theravada tradition. I had no idea what was Theravada, what was Mahayana, what was Tibetan Buddhism, but now I know he was from the Theravada lineage. And another eye-opening event, and eventually I followed this teacher, which eventually led to my ordination in Burma. So that was a very long answer, but I hope you got an idea as to what happened, yeah, during those years.
I just have like 20 more questions because no, that's super interesting. And also, like, you ended up in amazing places. Like Buddhadasa Bhikkhu is like an incredible, for those who don't know, the place you were in Thailand, he was an incredible scholar and deep practitioner and very interesting Theravada monk himself, but kind of wrote a lot, talked about emptiness in a very interesting way. He had some Mahayana flavor too. He's incredible, and his books are very wonderful. Just for those of you who are interested in finding out where Simon has been. Yeah.
Buddhadasa really went for the cross-religious harmony. Yeah, I think he's one of the few Theravada monks who often speak of other religions, and he initiates conversations with the other faiths, and he finds the commonalities in the various faiths. So for that, he's quite special. Yeah. All right. So on my list, I have another question for you, Will. So as you know, the Dharma and the teachings of the Buddha is very broad. So are there any particular aspects that you find it most resonating with yourself?
Well, it's a wonderful question. I'm just looking at some of the questions in the Q&A, because one of the things that comes to mind is related to one of the questions in the Q&A.
Oh, sure.
And so I just want to mention it. It says, do you think there's a difference in meditation practice with and without a religious belief? And I think one of the things that stands out to me about the teaching of mindfulness, which is, you know, there are some core texts from early Buddhism that come from thousands of years ago. These core texts on mindfulness, one is called the Anapanasati Sutta, which is about mindfulness with breathing. And the other is called Satipatthana Sutta, and that has to do with it's called the Foundations of Mindfulness. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is that when we learn to pay attention in a sustained way with our direct experience, amazing things happen that were mapped out thousands of years ago. So that's sort of like, you know, and speaking of like, you know, different teachers, and, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh talked about the miracle of mindfulness. So to me, what's so amazing about the foundations of mindfulness is that, so if we talk about mindfulness is our capacity to be aware of what is arising in the present without grasping onto it or pushing it away, just to be aware of it. We cultivate that, and we did this in the meditation with the breathing. So we start to develop a capacity to be aware in a sustained way with just this flow of sensation at the belly rising and falling, or at the nostrils. Right? So normally, I'm just going to teach a little bit for people, Simon, so that they get a little sense of like this part of it. So normally we're at 98% of the time just living in our story worlds, right? And that's why it's so unrestful to be you. Because your mind is, and that's what you described on your first retreat, which I think is it was a beautiful description. The mind is completely out of control. And most of us don't know it because we're so busy doing stuff. When you sit down, that's usually the first insight we discover is like, wow, I can't control this at all. It's all stories, right? It's future and past and stretching out infinitely. It's up and down, and I'm great, it's horrible, and boo, 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 boo. And it doesn't rest for a second. So we have no rest, no refuge. And that's why we're glued to our phones. We have to find something to put our attention on that takes us away from ourselves. And our whole society is based on that. I think we can say that globally now, not even just in the, you know. So this thing of being able to take your attention, which is not Buddhist or doesn't belong to any religion, something the Buddha discovered, you can take your attention and connect with something like the breathing and just be aware of moment to moment, breathing in, breathing out, that gets stronger. That's amazing. So usually 98% here, you go to the breath for a second and then you're off in the stories again. But as you practice coming back again and again, you start to be able to sustain attention in the present a little bit. And guess what? The thoughts are still happening, but you have like an anchor. That's so different, right? That's like you're not being carried away by every thought. That anchor. So you start to develop some concentration. That's called samadhi, samatha. And that can change your whole life, to not be completely at the mercy of this stuff. You start to experience some stillness internally. So what's amazing to me is that the Buddha taught we can be mindful with breathing, the body, with our sensations, pleasant and unpleasant. Instead of just reacting to them, we're aware of them coming and going. We can be aware of our mind states coming and going. Feel happy, feel sad, angry, yeah? So all those states are changing all the time. So see, my hand is like the stability of awareness. Without this hand, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm just going up and down and all around. That stability is amazing. Then you can watch experience come and go. What's amazing to me, and I'll stop here after this so I don't go on and on.
That's nice.
You see, we get excited talking about these things.
Yeah, I know.
To me, what's so amazing is the completeness of this one discourse, the Satipatthana Sutta, the completeness of it, and that it includes all our experience of the senses, emotions, thoughts. And just by paying attention moment to moment, all of the things that are written about in these ancient texts, all of these incredible experiences, really feeling much freer in your own mind and body, that all happens just from sustaining attention. Yeah. And to me, that's something I'm endlessly excited about.
Very good point. You see, as you speak, the sun even comes out in my mind. Yeah, because one main theme in Buddhism is about liberation and emancipation, isn't it? But that is really too far off for most people to even ponder, right? But yet what you just described is another kind of liberation that can happen right here, right now, right? Just being liberated from all these worries and anxieties and all these random thoughts to the past, to the future, that in itself is a liberating moment. So I totally echo with what you just said. I think that's something that really got me very much interested in the practice. And the other thing, you mentioned the suttas, right? Anapanasati and the Satipatthana suttas. And the other aspect of Buddhism is that it is not just academic and theoretical. Whatever was written in the suttas, they were actually instructions for practice. And for the people who do spend the effort to practice, they will derive the benefits. So it is much more than just a academic discussion. It's not just a PhD degree to talk about texts and scriptures, right? It is something that we can truly practice, and we can know that what was written down back in those days were real.
I think that's such a great point, Simon. It's sort of like, of course, religions are built up around things, but and that's wonderful. The kind of the structure of the teachings and also of the monastic tradition is so powerful. Yeah. And the core insights that the Buddha came to are insights about human experience. So in that, they're a little bit like, discoveries that can be made by anyone who introspects, right? And just like we don't attribute scientific discoveries are just discoveries about nature. And I think that's part of what is exciting to me, is that you have all the equipment. And if you have a little bit of instruction, you can do this discovery yourself. And one thing I love about it, and I experience this too, is that the benefits, even though there are kind of like, far off benefits, there are very near-term benefits.
Yeah.
Just being a little, I just am so amazed. Like, we went through all this schooling. Yeah. Nobody teaches you how to be with a body and a mind. No. Nobody teaches you, what do I do with emotions? What do you do with the thoughts in your head? Nobody even teaches you that. That's amazing. So there's also there's an aspect of training, but also this aspect of learning how to live in harmony with this condition. It's like a culture or like a new place. And so I just think that's, that's part of why it's so relatable, I think.
Yeah, one word from the teachings always stand out in my mind, and that's ehipassiko. Come see for yourself. Mm-hmm. The Buddha didn't just say these things, to be put on record. He was asking us to come see for ourselves. So ehipassiko. I always keep this word in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so important. I think a lot of people, come to these practices through suffering.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfectly good way to arrive at them. You arrive not because you want to do something good for you. I'm not so wired to always want to do things that are good for me. That was not my temperament. But when we really come face to face with ourselves, then there can sometimes be motivation, or you experience some huge loss, or you're, faced with living in a very stressful situation, as so many are. Whatever the catalyst is, that desire to live in more harmony in your own life and in your mind, I feel like that's not to be dismissed as a motivation. It's very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it is the first noble truth, right? Suffering. Mm-hmm. There is suffering in life, and at the least, we should come into terms with our suffering instead of repressing it or just sweeping it aside. I think we should accept and realize the fact that there is suffering in life, right? And it is not to be pessimistic, about the world view. It is just the reality. I mean, can anyone say the pandemic is not a massive suffering event for humanity, right?
Yeah.
It is very blatantly on display in front of our eyes right now, right? That there is suffering in life at all levels, right? And I always think, you know, the fact of suffering is nothing to be, you know, to be ashamed of or whatever. It's just the first step, you know, on this spiritual path, you know, the path to awakening. Another aspect of the Dharma that I find very much resonating with myself is the aspect of compassion. Right? So we can talk about all these esoteric stuff, right? Samadhi and jhanas and all that. But at the end of the day, we all live within society. And there are a lot of people out there that require compassion and would benefit from compassion. And that is one reason why I set up Mindful Studio, is that I sincerely felt that yoga and meditation have brought me a lot of insights, physical and mental health. And like you said, still a lot of people out there have no idea about how this mind works. They are just led by the mind, led astray often, without even knowing what this mind is all about. So I'm hoping, out of compassion, so to speak, to bring some assistance to those in need by setting up this studio. So, and I also thank the teachings for giving me this motivation to do so. Yeah.
I'll just say, I think it's so wonderful you're doing that. And I remember that conversation we had when you were thinking about starting this. And I think it's, you know, for you to share all of what you have come to over these years. I think that's such a beautiful offering. And so many people are offering this or that these days, but that it comes from the depth of your own practice, I think is like, that's just truly valuable. And what a wonderful thing that you're creating this community around it. And I wish we could see each other. We can't, but we know that you're here. Yeah. Those of you attending.
Yes. Okay, so like I said, time really flies. Have we answered all the Q&As? Okay, let's look at question number 2. What are your views regarding meditating while listening to a specific note frequency? Is this part of your spiritual practice? Oh, I'll go first. Personally, I do not listen to any music or tunes when I meditate. If there are any birds singing and the wind blowing, you know, that's absolutely fine. But personally, I wouldn't add any particular music or sound in the background. I think that in a way might even distract the meditation, but that's just my view. Are there any insights from your side, Will, regarding that?
No, I don't practice that way either, but it makes me think about how many different types of meditation there are. There are so many different types, and so just because that's not part of my way of practicing doesn't mean I think less of it. I just don't know it in a direct way. And I do think there's something to, you know, practicing in finding a method that has its own coherence, and you practice with that. Doesn't mean you can't practice other ways, but no, I practice much more similarly to Simon in that way, where not listening to anything that's constructed externally, but just being aware of the moment to moment experience as it appears through the senses. And sometimes that's, if you're in a city, it's like honking and all kinds of sound, you know, there's a rich territory of sound appearing in awareness. And that's all, you know, to be included. One teacher in the Thai forest tradition, Ajahn Sumedho, he talks about listening to the sound of silence. So he talked that kind of ringing in the ears, that kind of like, he talks about using that as a meditation object. So that's what I think of when you share that, which is like, it's not an external sound, it's an internal sound. But he talked about, and don't know a lot about it, but just using that as a way to steady, because it's here all the time. So a way of really, almost like a physical, like a substitute for the unconditioned, here all the time. So you can like really get concentrated. And I remember giving that instruction to somebody at a retreat who told me they had very severe tinnitus, which is like a ringing in the ear that was driving them crazy. And he said, I told him, use that as a anchor for sound. Try that. And he came back the next year and said it had changed his life. You know, just in like kind of using that as a support for stability, as opposed to like this thing he's trying to really fighting with. So anyway, that's just some thoughts that come to mind.
We just talk forever, because when you mentioned this, I suddenly recall one experience back in Swanmok, because I went in July at the time. It was rainy season. So at one sitting, it was like heavy downpour. So all I heard were the sounds of the rain shattering on the roof. So it was so uniform, the sounds, it became a very good object for focus. And I had an amazing sitting in that session, thanks to the rain. And it's nature. So that made it even that much more special. Natural sounds. Yeah. All right. So I'm afraid people in Hong Kong will have to go to lunch. So although I feel like speaking to you forever, and I hope the audience also want us to talk forever, but we can't be here forever. So I would like to close with a short meditation. It's going to be a little bit of a mixture of samatha and also loving kindness, right? So it's my own little blend of meditation. I hope you will indulge me in these last 5 minutes, and let's just get into the practice, right? So can I ask everyone to come into their comfortable seat again, either on the floor or on your chair with your feet flat on the floor. Now let's feel free to just shake the head and shoulders a few times, let loose a bit. And with the next inhale, let's lengthen the spine a little bit. And with the exhale, let's relax the shoulders. And if you wish, close the eyes or half close the eyes. Let's briefly come back to the body, the physical body. Visualizing the position of the physical body. When we are sitting, we know that we are sitting. Sensing our own body weight. A reminder that we are in constant relation with the gravity of the earth. That we are just part of the universe. Physical body and the earth interconnected. Feel this strong connection with Mother Earth, almost like a sense of anchoring, just like trees with roots anchoring to the soil. Now let's find the breath again. Keeping in mind, we are not here to control the breath, but just being aware of it. If it is long, know that the breath is long. If the breath is short, know that the breath is short. There's a technique called noting the breath. So sometimes we can apply this technique. When we inhale in the mind, we also say inhale or inhaling. And when we exhale in the mind, we can also make a mental note, exhale or exhaling. This technique would further help us stay in the present moment, focusing on the breath. Now, I wish to end the practice with a loving kindness wish for all of us here. So if you could just repeat with me in your minds, may we be happy. 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 Once again, returning to the breath. Let's take an inhale together through the nose. And on the exhale, just let it all go. Slowly, when we are ready, gradually opening the eyes. Thank you. Thank you. So we have come to the conclusion of today's webinar, exactly 1 hour now. And Will, is there anything else you wish to share with the group?
Just thank you all, and I hope you find, some way of working with your own mind, and hopefully I can come to Hong Kong someday and see your studio.
Yeah, I'm sure you must come. In fact, it's not a hope; it's a must. Okay, then. So thank you all for joining. And if there are similar events in the future, I will make the appropriate announcements through my channels via Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and also email. I will hang around for a while because I want to go through the chats and see what people have said. I didn't have a chance to look at it. And for those who would have to leave us, Have a nice day, have a nice afternoon, have a nice evening, and have a nice 2021. May the pandemic leave us very soon, and we can all return to a sense of normal life. Thank you once again. Thank you for joining. Bye, Will.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.